All right.
Mhm.
What's going on, everyone? This is Ellard Thomas with Power and Success Ministries, where we help you live the life that God intended you to live in power and in success. Today, I'm happy to be joined with a good friend, confidant, entrepreneur, and true man of God, Dwayne Deloatch. And together, we're going to be talking about moving on, how to deal with life after a breakup. A lot of people are dealing with breakups right now, some from the aspect of being the initiator and others the recipients. And together we're going to tackle those particular challenges and hopefully you will find a path forward to living a happier and more fulfilling life. Dwayne, what's going on, my good man?
Chilling, man. It's a beautiful day. We just finished getting some version of snow, so I'm just sitting in the house, enjoying the quiet time as much as possible. Trying
Okay.
to get my thoughts together for this conversation. I don't know how easy, good, or bad it's gonna be. So I talk to
Right.
Jesus, and we gonna let it do what it do.
Well, I think anytime you have a conversation where it talks about severing something or breaking up, there is a component that a lot of people do not want to talk about. There's some uneasiness to deal with, right? I feel like over my own life, and I've been through several breakups, and some of those emotional challenges were devastating to the point where I didn't know I was going to be able to recover. Have you ever been in that situation?
Oh yeah. And each situation is different. What I found, the first real breakup that I had, it was a girl I thought I was gonna marry, went out and bought a ring for, et cetera, et cetera. And it just came crashing down. And like most things, you see things, but love is the great the great shield. It
Right.
blinds you from things that you should be paying attention to.
Hmm.
And so when it fell apart, it was the first time in my life I had loved somebody to that point that I was willing, if you understand marriage as a man, you become sacrificial. You put the next person first. So
Right.
it was the first time in my life that I had gotten to that point. And so as a man, a lot of times we're not taught how to deal with our emotions.
Mm.
So I had all these things that I was feeling that I had no understanding for. I didn't know how to balance it. I didn't know how to deal with it. So I went through a lot of destructive patterns. Um, and even before then, when my dad passed away, the weight of how to take care of the family and move through that and get everybody, take care of everybody else. When I moved through that and everybody else had settled, I hadn't figured out how to grieve properly either. So even
Mm.
then, what I mean? Like I fell into destructive habits. And it was one of those things where after I broke up with the girl, I thought I was going to marry, bought the ring for her. I had to figure out like, all right, I got to do more than just feel these emotions. I got to understand them. I've got to figure out a healthy way where they're coming from, what they mean. And so I think that was kind of the first time that I ever kind of leaned on God from a standpoint of I kind of moved into this space where I was like, I got to hear from God. I got to know what's going on. Nothing that I understand makes sense.
Right.
Um, and it was just a process. And it was kind of one of those things, you you talk long enough, you expose your wounds long enough that there's some type of healing and understanding brought by. And some things you never get an answer for. Like
Right.
honestly, you just got to close the door on it. But just understanding where you are and who you are and why you feel this way. Why do you feel like you're not valued now that this person has moved on or told you they don't want to be a part of your life anymore? Like you have to come and go get your identity back. That's one thing that Dr. Darius, I think his last name is Daniels, talked about in one of his things was once you've been rejected, there's a part of you that has to go back and get your identity now. Your identity
Mm.
was with that person. Now you got to go back and get your identity. You got to figure out how to be you without that person again. So there's just a process, and a lot of people don't want to go through the process. They want to ignore their feelings. They want to act like they're mentally stronger than the things that they're feeling. But thoughts and feelings are connected. Your feelings are based on what you're thinking. So trying to ignore your feelings are trying to ignore your thoughts. It's just a process that you just got to figure out. You got to go through it.
Wow. You used a word that's very interesting to me, and it was pretty impactful too. You said grieve, time to grieve. Usually, when people use the word grieve, they're associating that word to death, but in many instances, a breakup is like a death. So, elaborate on the process or the word that you use, grieving. Like, why you choose the word grieving?
I use grieving because whenever you've attached yourself to something, whether
Mm.
it's a vision, a person, a dream, whatever the case may be, and you experience that loss, there's a grieving process. Your heart is literally trying to say, I'm letting go of something.
Mm.
And especially when you're not prepared to make that move, it's much harder. And so I use grieving just from a standpoint of that's what you go through. You go through all the emotions of anger and trying to negotiate, all the steps of grieving you go through. And so whatever it is, it's a process. And I think a lot of times grieving is misunderstood. Like people only associate it with death. But anytime you've lost something that was close to you, that was dear to you, that quite frankly, you might even thought God gave it to you. You know what I mean? Like God gave me this thing inside of me to connect with. And now that I put in this work and effort, it's been taken away. And so you grieve. I liken it to the story of David when he lost his first son. And, he made some lot of stupid mistakes like we all do. And, it was kind of like God was like, hey, this is going to happen. And David, while the kid was alive, he fasted, he grieved, he cried. And I think you just have to go through that process. Like even the reality of it, you have to get to a point where you've accepted it. And that's one of the stages of grief, that you've accepted the reality of what it is, and then you let it go.
Right.
And as I was studying before we hopped on this call today, I've been trying to figure out personally how to be still. And I read the Hebrew word for still when in one of the scriptures, is still is to let go, is to release.
Right.
And so I think that's the part that grieving often has to come to. It has to come to a point of release. And with David, once his child was dead, the dudes that was trying to comfort him, they were scared. They were like, yo, he been cutting a monkey since he found out.
Right.
When we tell him this, they don't tell him what he's going to do. And they were amazed that once they said the kid was gone, he just came to this place of acceptance. He cleaned himself up. He got something to eat. And then it was like, this is the reality of my situation. And as Christians, a lot of times we want faith to ignore reality. That's not what your faith is supposed to do. Your faith is supposed to give you a God perspective of what can be.
Right.
And so, don't ignore the fact that the person died. Your faith now tells you that they're just asleep. They're in a better place than where you are right now.
Right.
They're forever with God. There's no more pain. There's no more suffering. We're suffering because we missed that person, but that person is in a better place. And the same thing when you let anything go. You may not understand it, especially when you're going through it, but you just have to have that faith and trust that in this place that I'm in, God's got me. And honestly, it sucks. It's tough.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, and I was telling a friend of mine, she just lost her sister a couple of days ago to cancer. And I told her, like, there is no need to hide your feelings, not talk to God in an honest way. You think for some reason you not talking about is God not knowing? Like, nah, it's not how it works.
Right.
So wherever you are, be honest about it. And that's my only claim to fame in life. I made a decision a long time ago. I won't lie to myself.
Right.
So wherever it is, wherever I'm at, I'm going to be honest in the space that I'm in.
That's great. So I appreciate you for being honest, for one. You have always been a straight shooter. So that's one thing I appreciated you, from business to the basketball court. So I appreciate that. I've never known you to ever lose your identity per se, probably because I'm on the outside looking in, but there's some internal factors that you're probably struggling through to re-identify yourself with Dwayne Deloatch. And I think a lot of women and men both, when they have spent so much time with an individual, and as you stated, lose their identity. So when you go through the process of going from we to me, there is an identity crisis, right? So what identity crisis did you undergo when you said I had to go back and find out who I was? You know what I mean?
I think it's just, depending on the depth of the relationship, scripture talks about two becoming one. And, a lot of times people are like, oh, you got to be married to do that. There's minglings of spirits, all that type of stuff. Another conversation for another day.
Right.
But like I know that you can get close to someone and now they become such a big part of you that they've complemented your life. You've now, I think Nas talked about it when in one of his songs, he was like, you lose literally half your heart, half your soul. Like you literally brought a person into your life and stop functioning on some level because that other person was complementing or a part of your life carrying that function.
Right.
For instance, I'm not a detailed person. So if I'm dating somebody that is, I was depending on them to kind of keep me track of maybe what I needed to do for the day or somebody's birthday's coming up. Like, so when that part is separated, it's like, okay, how do I function again? How do I take myself back into that space that I haven't been in for so long?
Wow. Okay.
And so that's the part of relationships that people miss sometimes. Like if it's been a really deep and profound relationship. And I say this from a standpoint of, I always dictated not by the emotion of love, but by what type of partner and friend we were.
Mm.
And that's part of what makes my breakups as hard as they've been, is because I've genuinely built a friendship with this person. You know what I mean? I've hung out with them. I know them. I see them outside of just the romantic capacity that we've engaged in. I see them as a human being. So that part is gone. And if you add the element of I've dated women that had children, that adds another element, because for me,
Right.
I don't look at it like if I date you, your children are separate. They're one and the
Yes.
same. If I have to have the capacity to love you and them the same way.
Mm.
If not, I'm going to do them a disservice, and they're going to feel like the stepchild, or they're going to feel like, you're dating my mom. So I've always taken, like, if I'm going to be in it with you, I'm going to be in it with them. So I don't also, lose that person. I enjoy being a father figure or being a father. So now that's being torn from me, and not having
Right.
kids of my own. Again, now something else I'm grieving. I'm not only grieving the loss of this relationship, I'm grieving the fatherhood experience that I had, that
Wow.
I prayed about. You know what I mean? Like, hey, God,
Mm.
I want children. I never had any of my own, that I'm aware of.
Mm.
But
We're being
you know
honest.
what I
We're being
mean?
honest.
Being honest, you know what I mean, that I'm
Right.
aware of. So now I get to this point where I made this connection with this kid through our total, love experience, and now that's being severed. So I lost the dream of being a father, which for me was a lot of things. In this last past relationship, it was, I was going to basketball games and football games, and when you got sick, I was taking care of you. I was picking you up from school. I was talking about your day. If you were being bullied, we were trying to, like, it was a whole life experience that I had been looking forward to, and thought I was being patient and waiting for God's timing. And now here we are.
Wow.
So, it's
Wow.
just all of that encompasses it.
And I think that's tough. And you and I have similar backgrounds when it comes to like different, a variety of different type of young ladies in our lives, right? And I think women actually have the same struggles. Sometimes their emotional attachments is stronger is the myth, but that's not necessarily true. Just because they may be more nurturing and oftentimes perceived as more emotional, their ties don't necessarily mean that they're stronger than ours, right? I dated
Right.
a young lady who had kids and I fell in love with the girls, right? I was in her life for 12 years. However, in certain points in that relationship, I realized that she and I probably shouldn't have been together, but I feel obligated to stay because I didn't see her as one person and the kids as the other. I saw them as
Right.
a package. And even though things that she and I were undergoing were unhealthy, I convinced myself to stay for the sake of the kids. And I talked to my pastor one day, and he told me something that was so powerful. He said, God never intended you to date your ministry.
Right.
And when we look back and start talking about what is the purpose of this individual in our lives, that's what we have to get down to. Is like, I'm attracted to you, but is my attraction enough to say I'm supposed to be with you? Right? And vice versa. I think if we were to go back, since hindsight is 2020, whether scientists say, you know what, right now is not the time. I'm not supposed to be adjoined at the hip with this particular person, but what am I supposed to pour into this individual to help them get to their next level that God intended them to get to, right? And I still look back in my life, I had undergone a divorce, and the young lady I dated, she and I were good friends, right? So we know each other since we were 15. And so she was there at one of my lowest points of my life. And she hung in there and saw me through the healing process. Then we went from black and white to gray and blurred those lines and never succinctly talking to each other about where this is going. So we operated in gray for a long time because
Right.
gray seemed like a safe place, but it was also a place for me to understand, okay, who you really are. I did not have an identity outside of her, except for I was a father figure and she and I together per se, but she was doing what she's doing, I was doing what I was doing. And it wasn't until we made the decision that, okay, you know what, we're done playing this playing house game, let's get together. And it was at that point I found out that she decided to allow herself to be with another individual who had to be the father of her kids, right? And that tore me, Dwayne. That tore me because as men, we're pretty methodical most of the times when we decide to give our heart to someone, right? We go through
Yeah.
these filters like, okay, this is a woman I want to be with. And when we made that decision, we find ourselves like, oh my gosh. And when that hurt happens, we do entertain some destructive behaviors, right?
Right.
I think about Samson. And since my pastor told me don't date your ministry. And
Right.
in Samson, the beginning of, I think it was the 14th chapter, Samson wanted a young lady that was outside of his group, right? And his mother and father knew that's not the woman he should be with. but he was adamant about having this woman. And scripture even talks about how his parents said, I don't think God even wants this to be for you, but he was adamant. So he finally get contact with this young lady. And what ended up happening was that when he gets with her, the father gives her away to somebody else. And in his anger, he slew a whole lot of people, right? And I think when we're dealing with anger and hurt because of broken expectations or unfulfilled expectations, we have a habit of doing a lot of foolish things. So tell me about some, and since we're being honest, a couple of destructive behaviors you entertained when you were dealing with your breakup, because I think it's really important for us to address how do we usually think about hurt and how we try our best to get through it before we start talking about how to remedy it.
Um, Man, destructive behavior. Well, I don't drink, I don't
Right.
smoke.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it was like sex. Sex was my numbing agent.
Right.
Um, and what I did was a lot of times when you're going through something, when you connect to people, when the connection is only supposed to be encouragement and uplifting, it becomes shared trauma and you connect on a different level.
Right.
So what I found myself was I connected with somebody because we both had shared trauma. I didn't know about hers at the time, but I knew what mine was. And so as much as I fought it, I was like, hey, it started out, I'm just going to be a friend to support you. She wanted more. I was like, listen, I'm not in that space. I am a wreck. Like I already knew where I was.
Right.
But I also wanted the comfort of somebody wanting me too at the same time. Once you've been rejected, it's kind of like this person wants me. And it feels like it means more because they want you in your broken state. You know what I mean? It's like you're seeing me at my worst and there's still something that says you want to love me, or so you think. And so that was my destructive behavior, you know what I mean?
Right.
And I learned later on is that happens with people, shared traumas. Wherever there's gaps, there's connections, right? So that's why you owe it to be the healthiest version of yourself when you're trying to go out in the world and find somebody. Because
Wow.
if not, you'll end up connecting the broken places instead of the complementary places. And so that's where I was. She had daddy issues. I had, broken heart. And because I treated her better than any other dude, even in my broken state, that was what she connected with. But she
Wow.
didn't really connect with me. And so the destructive behavior becomes I'm not fully myself, but I'm trying to give something to you that I don't have. And so because what I'm giving is incomplete, it makes you feel incomplete. And now we've created the same cycle that we didn't want to be in the first place, which is this brokenness. We're just cycling back this brokenness. I'm not healed, but I'm trying to give you something I don't have because it's not complete. I've hurt you. Now you're giving back the hurt that I gave you. And it's just on and on and on and on and on.
Right.
And I think another destructive habit is isolation. You know what I mean? Like I kind of was like, okay, well, I don't need to be around anybody. I just kind of need to deal with myself. That's a terrible place to be too, because man, in quiet times, you can either be talking to God or you can be talking to the devil. And the devil
Yes,
is
sir.
way louder than God is. For whatever reason.
You can say that again, bro.
I still need some answers about that,
You can
but
say that again, King. Yeah, I know that's right.
and so you're in these spaces and you're in your head, and all the devil does is point you to what's wrong with you. Right? That's his thing, you know what I mean? He's called the accuser of the brethren, you
That's
know what I
right.
mean? His name translates in a lot of things of him being in a judicial setting of I'm gonna find what's wrong with you and accuse you of that
Yep.
and show you that you're not worthy or you deserve the pain that you're in.
Exactly.
And so the destructive habit in that space is really stop focusing on yourself so much. Like, I think what I learned moving forward was I need to be in productive places. I need to
Yes.
be in the healing spaces. And so the second time I went through a heartbreak, it was terrible. Like everything that could have gone wrong at one time went wrong around the same time. I lost my job, lost my girl. Like it was terrible. You know, I mean, if I would have had a dog, it probably would have died. Like it was one of those Job type of moments, right?
One of those country
So
songs.
yeah, it was definitely a number one seller. And so the fortunate thing was when I was going through that, I ended up volunteering at my church, and my minister at my pastor at that time, he was beginning his TV ministry,
Okay.
and so I was one of the cameramen. So about every other day, I was hearing the word. I was just in the word, and it was probably the best thing for me because number one, I was volunteering and I was helping. You know, I mean, I was using that time in a productive way in service, which took my thoughts off of me and onto something else. And then I was getting the word and not even knowing, like I was just trying to stay busy, to be honest with you. My pastor was cool as a fan. And he's been a mentor to me, a spiritual mentor to me too. And so I just knew I needed to be in a space where I wasn't by myself entertaining these destructive thoughts and habits. And so that's when I kind of learned, like, you got to get with God. Like, even if it's nothing but listening, even if you're not doing anything, even if you're crying your eyes out, even if you're mad, if you're cussing, just be in that space with God and stay there until something changes.
Wow. You know, it's interesting to say that because I was in my studies and in my writing, I've been doing personal and professional development for over 20 years. And even in that discipline, I still find myself dealing with emotional challenges, right? I still find myself going to the past and figuring out what happened and still shaping myself. And I came up with 7 tips on how I move through a breakup, and I want to share these with you so we can have a discussion. Because you're touching on it right now, right?
Okay.
One of them
All right.
was return to your spiritual foundation. When you are going through grief, as you stated, and amounts of pain, you have a tendency to engage in destructive behaviors. But that's the greatest opportunity in your brokenness that you come to God, right? To help you get recentered and refocused. He will show you that, yes, although you're hurting, this is not the end. And I think a lot of times when we go through breakups, we feel like this is the end, right?
Right.
It may be the end of this relationship. It may be the end of this connection, but it's not the end of your life. And I think a lot of people get that misconstrued because they pour so much in their mate that they forgot about themselves and the value that they still have, right? Just because a person leaves your life doesn't mean they take all your value. Don't get that don't get that twisted, a colloquial term to use. So you're touching on that. So tell me, when you return to your spiritual foundation, how did that help you? If you don't mind elaborating on the story that you already just told me.
Um, I think it becomes key, and this is something I learned a long time ago. If you look at the Bible like it's a prescription, it's a cabinet full of prescriptions, and whatever is going on in your life, you go in there, you try to find the remedy for it. You try to
Okay.
find what's the healing for it. So for me, it was like, I'm heartbroken. What does God say about heartbroken? What does he say about lost dreams? What does he say about lost visions? And so I went and I found something that said, it was more like God promising it's going to be okay. When Jesus walked on the earth, he said, you got to come to him like a little child. And if you ever observed a child, when you tell them something, they believe it.
Yep.
We going to McDonald's. All right. They
Okay.
going not only gonna believe it, they gonna
They gonna
stay
hold you
on you
to
till they
that.
get McDonald's. Right. You
Right.
said we was going to McDonald's. It's 4:00 when we going. It's 5:00. Like, they own it. And
Right.
so I had to look at it from that standpoint. Like, God's made me these promises. I got to hold on to them, and I got to keep going after God until he tells me they're mine. So in this state, it's more of the restoration promises, the redemption promises. You know what I mean? I'm gonna give you beauty for ashes, for your shame. I'm gonna give you double. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I reach out for these promises, and I'm like, okay, God, you told me this. Where I'm at, I can't see it, but I have to trust you enough to walk through it. And one of the things the scriptures talks about is the word being a light into your path.
Yes.
And I think about, I try to visualize what these things are. And he talks about a lamp. A lamp only guides you to your next step.
That's
if you got a
right.
flashlight, it's a limited view in what you can look at. And
Thank you, sir.
so that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to push out everything else that I see, because again, the devil can be so loud. You know what I mean? He walks around like a roaring lion. He can be so loud. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to push out all of that noise that says I failed, or I'm a failure, or I'm not worthy of this and this, that, and the third. I try to push all that aside, and I say, okay, what does God say about it? And that's the space that I try to stay in.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful, Dwayne. I appreciate that, sir. I'm gonna be honest with you. There was moments when I was going through my grief and I was overstricken with hurt that the last thing I want to do was turn to God because I was blaming God, right? And the reason why I say that is because if he is the orchestrator of things that are to, that were started and to come, then he know what to and what not to put in to my path, because he knows me, right? So I remember lead is not into temptation, right? So I always felt like I desire a certain type of woman. I like these type of women, right? And why does God not take away this attraction I have for those particular type of women, you know what I mean, and leave me at my own devices to struggle with that? But that's my ignorance. I come to
Right.
find out, right? I think
Yeah.
God does not lead you in temptation, but oftentimes we're led astray by our own desires, if you will. And we were talking
That's
about
right.
Samson, Delilah, for example, and we all have a Delilah, both men and women. And Delilah is nothing more of that individual that we're overly attracted to the point we become blinded by our purpose. Because Samson's job was to be a judge. However, led by his heart and his desires, it took him through detours that he shouldn't had to have gone through, right? And it wasn't until I got older and more mature spiritually that I'm sorry. I had to say, sorry, Lord, I'm so sorry for blaming you. I thank you for not letting this relationship continue on, right? I had not known that you had greater for me. What I thought was the greatest of women, God was like, you have absolutely no idea. You are looking at this particular person in your limited view and how you feel about this person. What I have for you is so much greater. See, this young lady might be good for a time such as this, but she was not designed to be your wife. She was not designed to help you grow, strengthen, and achieve your purpose. And I think going back to your spiritual foundation helps you realize where you've erred, where God can correct you and then put you on a new path. Now, since we've been honest, that doesn't necessarily mean that my stupidity stopped there. I mean,
Oh, no. I mean, one thing about as my pastor says, as a human being, I can tear some life up. I can jack this thing all the way up.
right.
So no, and even when as we talk about Samson, when I was reading it, the one thing as I was reading the study notes on it, it said God used an opportunity to create conflict with the Philistines. Like
Yes,
Samson's whole purpose was to get rid of the Philistines.
that's right. Hmm.
So when I read that, I'm thinking, even in our faults, God is trying to bring something out of it.
Yes.
And that's what I try to, and trust me, it sucks right now. Like right now, I tell people all the time, I tell Jesus I ain't happy and we gonna talk about this at some point. Like, I don't know when. like I know I can't ask this, but Jesus, you got some explaining to do. You know what I mean? Like
right.
that's how I feel. Like you need to talk to me about this because anyway, whole other conversation for another day. But that's
For
the
sure.
honesty I approach it with. Like you got some explaining to do. I don't deserve an answer, and I might not ever get one, but I sure would like to talk to you about this.
Right.
But that's kind of what I took from the Samson thing is that God uses our broken states even to bring something out of it.
right.
So sometimes we don't cut it off when God said, "Okay, that's enough,"
Hmm.
and that's the problem,
Right.
right? You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like God has created a framework for what this is supposed to be, and we push past that framework.
Hmm. Wow, I
Um,
appreciate this. Yeah.
yeah. So I think, and again, I can look at other relationships, and even when I went to counseling, and let me say this: go to
Say it.
counseling,
Say it.
go to counseling. Like for real. I'm black, I'm man, ain't no wrong with me. Go to counseling. Here's what counseling. Here's what I found counseling to be.
Uh-huh.
Counseling gives you perspective and tools to handle situations that you're not equipped for.
Right.
Right. So when I've been going through things, I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Hmm.
Straight up. Like I'm praying, I'm reading, but I don't know what I'm doing.
Right.
Let me go get some skills. I look at it like anything else. If I'm in the kitchen, I got all these ingredients and I don't know how to cook,
Come on now.
turn on YouTube and watch a video, right? Like, how do you cook this? Like, let me get some instructions. Let me get some skills. So
Right.
that's what counseling is.
Hmm.
It exposes you to you. Counseling allows you to ask questions that you didn't even know you needed to ask.
Wow. Wow. You know
So,
what?
and that's what I use it for. Like, I need to ask some questions, but I don't even know where to start. Maybe you can help me. Let me tell you the situation, and then you can talk to me.
You know what's
So,
funny? It's like you and I are so in sync with each other because remember I told you I had 7 steps to dealing with your breakup, right? This is a great
right,
segue into step number 2. Take care of your body, take care of you, right? And I
right.
think after you've gone through these, return to your spiritual foundation, studying the word, praying, praising, whatever that may look like to you. Now you still have to take care of you, right? So tell me a little bit more about this counseling thing because you seem really passionate about the counseling and why is this so
I,
important
I
when it
am,
comes to
man,
taking
and
care of yourself.
I am because sometimes you just need perspective. Like, I've always said the relationships do one or two things, and I could show it scripturally, but they either reveal something in you or they reveal something to you.
Right.
And a lot of times when you're in the middle of a mess, you can't see either. You can't see yourself and you can't see what you're supposed to see.
Mm-hmm.
So what counseling allows you to do is it says, this is the mess that I am. Can you put this in perspective? Can you give me something to look at other than the mess that I see? And that's
Mm-hmm.
what counseling has done for me. It is because I mean I'm a geek, you know what I mean? Like I've been studying all types of human behavior since I was 15. I started reading
Okay.
philosophy and studying poetry at 15, Sun Tzu's Art of War at 16, Malcolm X biographies 16. Like I've been a geek for a long time. So
Okay.
my understanding of human behavior is there, but I don't know everything. And when you're dealing with yourself, you're always harder on yourself than you are on other people. So whatever I was going to, I magnified it, condemning myself. I should have known better. I should have seen this. I should have known this. You know what I mean? I should have been listening more. Like all the things that you think you should have been better at when you were going through it. But again, if there was genuine love involved, like the Bible said, love covers a multitude of sin, which means you're gonna overlook some stuff.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's just how it works. That's the beautiful thing about God. He overlooks all the stupid stuff that we do on a regular
Right.
basis.
Yes,
you know what I mean? So love is love. You know what I mean? God is love. So but that's what counseling was for me. It was, I'm in this mess. I can't see forward. I can't see backwards. Can you give me some type of direction? And that's what counseling has been for me.
Okay.
It has allowed me not only to see another perspective, but to see myself in the perspective. And sometimes you just need to hear from somebody else.
Right.
Sometimes it just needs to be a confirmation. And sometimes that's all counseling is. It's a confirmation. I knew this. I thought this. Yep, you was right. Now what you gonna do?
Exactly.
So and I mean, and anything that you do, like, you know, I mean, it's easy when you're going through heartbreak to also go through depression, situational depression. You don't want to get up. You don't want to bathe. You don't want to brush your teeth. You don't want to eat.
Don't want to talk to anybody.
Really, you don't want to talk to anybody. It's easy to go through a cycle of just continuing to be in this state of destruction. Like that's all it is. The depression is destruction. You know what I mean? Not eating is destruction. It's all destruction. It's just destruction in another way.
Wow.
So when you don't grieve properly, you're basically saying, I'm going to stay in a space of destruction. And that's why you can meet people 10, 15, 20 years who've never dealt with a situation and it's still destroying their lives. You know what I mean? They still haven't got over what such and such did to them in 1984. My dad went through it, in the last days of his life. His body broke down, but his body broke down because his mind had broke down. His spiritual foundation wasn't there. Okay. My mom told me that he would recall things and talk about people who had been dead 15 years. Situations he would talk about in that moment, like it happened that day that happened 20 years ago. He never healed. He never released what was going on in his life, and he just carried it with it. And I know plenty of people that feel like, oh, I put that behind me, I let it go. Your brain doesn't respond to trauma like that. It might put it in a box, but something's going to trigger that box. So either you heal or it's there. You know what I mean? It's working your subconscious. Your subconscious mind is stronger than any part of you.
Yes.
As much as people think, the things that operate in the background of your life are what control you. Those are what the scriptures call stronghold. You know what I mean? If you think about your body, your heartbeat moves without you. You breathe without thinking. You know what I mean? You process so many things on a daily basis without thinking. Your subconscious matters. And so saying that I'm not dealing with it basically says I'm going to let it operate on automatic. And if it's bad, it's going to bring bad things to you.
Right. I am loving this conversation because I'm thinking about all the times when I didn't take care of myself. Right. That I will go enter into another union, not necessarily a committed union, but be in the space with another person. Their intentions may be, oh wow, I love who Ellard is, right? I like this type of cat, right? And I don't see the iceberg beneath the ocean, right? And that it's about to cause her ship to crash. And find out that I have destroyed another person's life because I chose not to take care of myself and I didn't take the time to address my own hurt, which is another part of dealing with your breakup. When you don't address your hurt and you're not taking care of yourself, you become a ticking time bomb. Let's be honest, right? I don't care if you're a man or you're a woman. You are a time bomb. And as you said before, you said things in a black box, something's going to trigger that. When you get in the next state or another place with another person, something they're going to say is going to be remotely close to what another person did. And it's going to trigger that box. And all you say, you have TNT in your life. Just boom, just explode. And that person's trying to figure out, what did I even do? right?
Right.
It's not that he or she did anything. It's the fact that you never took the time to address your hurt and take care of yourself. So I'm loving this, So, we need to go to the next step, bro. Because that was one, two,
Okay.
and three all together. Address hurt, take care of
Okay.
your body. I'm loving this. You know what? Return to your spiritual foundation. Let's take a look at the next one, my good man. Yo, you and I are athletes.
Right.
And I think you're probably one of the best point guards I ever come across in the basketball court with. Not to say that you're best in the world, but
Appreciate it.
you hold your own. I appreciate that, especially when you give me the ball.
Appreciate it.
And step four is talking about, in addition to taking care of yourself, get active, right?
Right.
I remember in my depression states of closing the curtains, the blinds, laying on the couch, watching reruns of cartoons, right? And did not completely want to move. I must have gained like 15 pounds in a span of a week. You know what I mean? So
Right.
talk to us about how do you stay active and how does that contribute to your mental and physical, spiritual well-being?
First, I'm going to say this. For you, you gain weight. For me, I lost weight.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like I went to, because for me, I shut down, but because the way my brain works, and I won't go into great detail, but
Right.
at a young age, I was diagnosed as gifted with a learning disability. I have a
Okay.
tendency to be over analytical,
Okay.
right? I tell people, you ever watch Sherlock Holmes with
Yes.
Robert Downey Jr.?
Yep.
And
I
you know
love that
how
one.
before something happens, these
He
pictures, and
sees it.
he sees the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's how my life works on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really easy for me to get caught up in my thoughts and replay, spend so much time replaying forward, backwards in the moment that I didn't move. Like even though my mind was going 1,000 miles an hour, I didn't move. And so what I learned is that I'm gonna have to push myself. Now, not every day. Some days I just had to be in the space that I was in. Like some
Right.
days it was just laying on the couch, balled up, you know what I mean, with the remote in my hand, trying to distract myself. But what I realized is that because your mind is a goal-seeking computer,
Okay.
I gave myself goals. You know what I mean? Like I would put on my calendar, work out today, and I would fight tooth and nail to do that. And working out was nothing more than getting in the yard and getting out and walking in the street for 10, 15 minutes. Like I just knew I needed to do something. I needed to change the atmosphere that I was in. And so you have to be intentional. It's
Wow.
not going to be easy. Like the resistance, the space that you're in, the natural feeling is to do nothing. And you're going to have to fight against that. And so, any doctor will tell you the benefits of working out. It elevates your mood, all this other stuff, gets things moving, et cetera, et cetera. But the thing that I know, and this is where spiritual knowledge and spiritual foundation comes into play, that there is no stagnation in creation. There's
That's right.
only dying or growing. That's it. That's
Mm-hmm.
the two options.
Yep.
So when you understand that if I'm not moving, I'm dying, again, back to destruction, there's got to be something in you that wants to keep moving. Like, and your spiritual foundation plays a key in that, because there is something in you that has to come from your spirit that says, God has a great plan for my life. I know the
Right.
plans I have for you, plans to give you a hope and a future.
That's
What I mean?
right.
There's got to be something in you that you can go to that says, this is not it for me.
Mm.
And I think it just takes time. Like it's easy to say I'm going to work out today. It's harder to do it. You know what I
Do it.
mean? If
Mm-hmm.
you ain't took a bath today, it's way harder to get out and walk. But
Right.
again, you got to figure out ways to be intentional about your life. You got to, for me, I'm driven by my calendar, because, as entrepreneurs, you can get busy. If I can't put it on my calendar, it's not real.
Right.
That's the way I've always looked at it. So
Mm-hmm.
I make it real for myself. I make 9 a.m. shower real. I make a 1 o'clock walk real. You know what I mean? Like I put it on my calendar and I try to reach that goal, because the thing about it, if you set a goal and you don't reach it, you'll feel worse. But if you
Yep.
set it and you do reach it, you'll feel better.
That's right.
Right. So I know that there's a level of healing that's coming with me keeping my word. There's a book called The Four Agreements, and that's one of the things that it talks about, is that you being faithful to your word
Mm.
is one of the ways that you better yourself. So whatever that word you give yourself, you adhering to it makes you feel better about yourself.
Wow. Wow.
So that's what I did. I started promising myself and asking God to strengthen me, because that's one of the things that the Holy Spirit is supposed to do. He's your comforter. He's your strength. I stopped relying on me. God, scripture says that when you're weak, God makes himself
Strong.
shown
Yep.
strong. So
Mm-hmm.
I was like, all right, Jesus, I'm a wreck right now. If I'm moving, you moving me. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
whatever it is, if I'm moving, you moving me.
Uh-huh.
And so I realized that, one of the things about the Holy Spirit is he's partnering together with you. He doesn't move without your help. Like, he's not forcing you. He's a gentleman. He's going to help you do what you're supposed to do. And that's what I found. Like, for walking, God just helped me get off the couch. God got me out the couch. I can get me out the door. Right.
Ooh.
And that's kind of the way I took it. Like, again, the light being the path. The next step is, all right, the next step is me just sitting up off this couch. Lord, help me sit up off the couch. If I can get that far, I can go walking. And so that's just how I looked at it. Like, I can't die here. You know what I mean? Like, and that was just my resilience. That was just me believing the word, understanding I have purpose, and knowing that other people depend on me. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I can't die here. I have something inside of me that is a value to somebody, even if not on a romantic level, but there's something that I'm in this earth for. If I didn't have a purpose, I'd be gone. So
that's right. Yes, sir.
You know what I mean? So I got to get up. I can't stay here. I've got to move closer to my purpose, even though I thought my purpose involved this person. It sucks. I don't understand it. I don't like it, but I got to keep moving. And it takes time for you to get to that place. I'm not saying it happens overnight, but that's why that spiritual foundation is important, is because there was something in me that always brought me back to God's word, no matter where I was or what was going on. Like, in those broken, and I tell people all the time, for me, after I cried, even if I cried every day, I had this sense of peace, like I was empty. And I could hear God just long enough. You know what I mean? I think, was it Elijah when, whoever the chick was said, I was going to kill you. He ran out to a cave. You know what I mean? Like, after he mourned and ate and just basically was at the end of himself, he could hear God. And I think that's just the thing, a part of the grieving process. I could hear God, and I could hear him say, you got to get up.
Yes.
And that was it. Like, I got to get up. You know what I mean? I don't know what getting up looks like for every person. Every person's level of getting up is going to be different.
Right.
But some days getting up was just, man, go bathe, go take a shower, go brush your teeth. You know what I mean? Call somebody. Pick up. That's the other thing. Pick up the phone. Maybe all you got the strength to do is have somebody breathe life in you. Once I went through it, I called you, and I was like, man, I'm going through it, bro.
Right.
And I ain't got it. You know what I mean? Like, I need help.
Right.
And again, as a man, needing help always makes you feel less than. Like, there's something in you that says I should be able to conquer the world on my own. That's just pride. I learned a long time ago from watching my dad that pride will kill you just as quick as anything else.
Yes, sir.
So, you know what I mean? I had to get to a point like, what is it that I need? And who are the people? And that's the other thing. There are people that love you. It might not be the person that you wanted to, but there are people that love you. I started reaching out to them so they can invest in me, so they could love me to the point where I could get up and love myself.
Ooh, I love that. That's gonna be another. So that's gonna be another conversation one of these days, right?
Right. So that's what I did. I didn't tell everybody everything, because the young lady, I didn't want to cast aspersions on her, because,
of course, right.
You know what I mean? Because regardless of what we went through, she's a beautiful person. Like,
yes.
She may have made some bad decisions or hurt me in whatever capacity, but I don't want the reflection of how our interaction ended or is to be a reflection of who she is. Sometimes just people don't mesh because of different pains, things going on in life. So I just reached out to people and I just let them know I'm going through something, I'm struggling. Of course, I don't have my normal outlets, and this plays a part in it. Being active in a pandemic is difficult. You know what I mean?
Right.
You know what I mean? I had outlets pre-pandemic. I could have dealt with heartbreak better pre-pandemic a lot. I would have went and played ball. I would have worked out. I would have traveled. But my world became 4 walls and a house.
Right.
So being active became even more challenging. And I think a lot of people go through that too. Like, my normal life has been taken away. I've got to grieve that, and I got to figure out how to have a new normal life. And so when sometimes the things you go through compound your ability to be active. You know what I mean? I've torn my ACL and things like that. Like, being active was different when I was recovering from an injury. You know what I mean? I still had to be active, but active can be, my mind has to be active. I need to be reading. I need to be learning. I don't need to just be letting my brain take over. I don't need to be turning on sad love songs. Like, I didn't do that at all. You know, everything I listen to at this point is either gospel or hip hop.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I'm either bumping Nas, you know what I mean? Kendrick, Little Brother. Like, I've got something going on,
Right.
that is not taking me to the space of, oh, she left me, my heart broke. Like, I'm not listening to Boys to Men End of the Road. Some of y'all might not be old enough to remember that. But at one point, that was the go-to
It
break
was
my
a
heart
go-to.
song,
Yes, sir.
You know what I mean? If you're doing something a little more modern, I'm not turning on Beyonce. I'm not turning on Renata. I'm not turning on The Weeknd. Like, I'm not engaging in this type of conversation with myself. Like, oh, we had something beautiful. Like, yeah, maybe we did. And maybe at some point I can look back at it and be like, yo, it was dope. But today
Right.
it sucks. And I
Right.
need a new vision for my life. So I look back on that when I got a new vision. Once I can live in
Right.
my new vision, I can look back on my past and
Right.
appreciate where it's brought me.
Right. You know what? I appreciate this so much. I want to encourage individuals to know that incremental movements is still path towards success, right? I look at the slug, for example. I remember when I was little, I remember I threw a slug, just being in my my disruptive state. I threw a slug, and I swear to you, 3 days later, I swear to God, it must have been the same slug. Came up to my porch, like looked at me and started going moving like this. I'm like, yeah, and it freaked me out, honestly, right? And I
Right.
think we have to go from like big goals when we're going through our depression states to micro goals, right? Like you said, for example, if that's just getting up, go take a shower or bathing or brush your teeth, open up your blinds, for example, go from the couch to
Right.
your window and open the blind and see how blessed you are when the rays of light hit you, right?
Right.
There's something when you transfer from darkness to light that shifts your entire mood, that gives you the motivation to go do something. You know what I mean? And you said something so eloquently about not casting negative light on the individual, because every individual has contribution to how the relationship ended, right?
Right.
Now, we in our own mind, we always think we ain't doing anything wrong. Like, no, it was always that person. And I want to say thank you so much for being accountable and showing that level of maturity to say, you know what, I still love her to the point where I want anyone else to think negatively of her because of the outcome that she and I are experiencing right now. Right.
Right.
So that's powerful. That's powerful. So one of my other steps I was looking at, and as you can see, is build up to ensuring that you're going to be holistically healed or have a path forward to dealing with your breakup. And I want to say this: remind yourself of your greatness. You have to remind yourself that you are still great no matter what has happened, whether this young man left you, this woman left you, that you have value and you still are great. God did not create junk. And as you said before, the enemy will make you want to feel like you are junk, right? Even if you're the initiator of the breakup, you're not junk, right? Or if you're the recipient, you are an individual who is phenomenal. You're still creative. You still have purpose. It's just that this person's time in your life is over. So now you have to find out how to move forward and get closer to your purpose. So talk to me about reminding yourself what being great looks like, because I know you're still going through that process.
Um, I'm not going to say that I focused on me being great. I focus on me being thankful.
Okay.
Um, and what I mean by that is, regardless of what this situation or heartbreak puts me in, I still have a blessed life. J. Cole said there's no such thing as a life that's better than yours.
That's right.
And so what I've learned how to do is wake up and be thankful. I just start off thanking God. Thank you, I got a roof over my house. Thank you that I'm working. Thank you that I'm healthy, relatively healthy. I just try to start my day of all the things that I'm thankful for. Thankful for the friends and family that do pour into me, that love on me. Thank you for the great relationships that I do have. Like, I start my day being thankful, and that shifts the atmosphere. You know what I
Okay.
mean? So once I'm thankful, now I can look at myself and be like, you know what? God's given me gifts and he's given me talents. And, there are things that he's blessed me with that, instead of focusing on what I don't have, if I focus on what I do, I can grow that more. You know what I mean? Like, I can't focus on what I can't control anymore. And that's one of those things that I can't control. And one of the things that you and I talked about early on is completely letting go.
Right.
You know what I mean? And the one thing that I coupled with what you told me and what my counselor at the time told me was, do what your heart is strong enough to do.
Mm.
Your boundaries will keep changing. What you're strong enough to do will keep growing as time goes on.
Mhm.
So give yourself a place of growth. And if you try to get there and you don't meet it, you know what I mean? You know where you are. Work from that space. And so when I reflect on myself, I work from it from spaces. You know what I mean? I work from it from a space of who I was with this person. And as that separation goes, who I am as an individual. And that focus becomes clear. Like I look at myself as I've got something special on the inside of me that God gave just for me. Your gifts are open doors for you. Let me get back to what that gift is. And as I told you, offline, the only thing I'm trying to do in this season is hear from God.
Right.
Like I don't want to, even if I have a plan or something I think I should do, I want God to confirm it. Like I'll write it down and I'll put it somewhere. But I'm still trying to figure out, is that me talking to me or is that God talking to me?
Right.
You know what I mean? And so that's my focus now. Like I want the word of God to breathe life into me. And that's what my focus is. Like, what is God speaking into me? Because that's where life begins and ends. Like, so if I'm not getting that, then anything I tell myself doesn't matter because it's going to be built on something that's not true. So I'm trying to remove my consciousness and have a God consciousness. And that just starts with being grateful and thankful. And that has probably done as much for me as anything else. And also, I mean, and this is again something my counselor told me. She was like, don't ask God to fix the heart that you have. Ask God to give you a new heart. And so what I'm looking at is that it's going to be great for me is I'm going to have a new heart with new expectations and a new vision and a new capacity. Like I'm still going to be me, but God's going to give me this heart now that has been upgraded. You know what I mean? Like it's getting a car. Like I was driving this nice car. Now I'm in the Tesla.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like God's going to upgrade me and I'm going to be able to still be me in this vehicle, but this heart is going to have a capacity for something greater now. So that's when I think about greater or me being something, I think about God having something greater for me. Me have grown to the point where my vision can expand. And so I'm still in the process. Like what God got next to me, I don't have a clue. I'll be honest with you. I mean, I've moved in certain things because I felt like God has told me to, but I don't know what it's going to end up on. You and I have done some things together, business wise. But like I told you, the pandemic, one of the things I had to grieve was my business. My whole clientele got shut down because they were the people affected most about how I did things. So, that's something else. I was like, man, I finally get to a point where something's clicking and it's gone. Like what happened to that vision? So again, if I base it on who I am, I suck right now. You know what I mean? But if I base it on God has a purpose and a plan and these gifts and talents are not, going to waste. I think, what is it? The calling that God has you on you is irrevocable.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So whatever I've lost, God still gave me this for a purpose. Let me find what this purpose is. And so that's where I am. Like, I'm trying to take less of the focus on me and more of on God and where do you want me to be? Where do I need to be? Because obviously I done messed something up. That's the way I look at it. Like, obviously I done jacked this up somewhere. I done got off track. I don't know where.
Right.
I thought I was listening. You know what I mean? Like, I thought I was doing what I was told, but maybe I'm wrong.
Exactly.
So at this point, I'm just trying to be better at listening. My mom used to tell me that all the time when I was looking for something. She was like, it's over here. She would tell me where it is. And as a kid, I look all over it.
Right.
And I'm like, I ain't see it. It won't there. She's like, boy, if I got to get up and go over there and I find it, we're going to have some problem. You know what I mean? So I go back again. And I look. I don't see it. Did you move anything? Did I move anything? Let me try that. You know what I mean? Right. Oh, here it is. You know what I mean? So I kind of feel like even with God, I got to take that same approach. Like God said, it's over here. And I overlooked it. I didn't move certain things out the way. Right. I didn't do what I was supposed to do on my end. So God didn't put me in the wrong place. I just didn't look well, So
exactly.
I'm trying to be like, look, somehow I messed this up because, the word of God, the seed of God is incorruptible. So I'm the missing link in all of this. I'm the foul. I'm the person that's fallible in all of this. And that's how I try to approach it. And don't get me wrong. I had some choice words for God. I'm like, I did what you told me to do. After that last relationship, I did X, Y, Z. I healed. I ain't touched nobody. I ain't drinking. I did everything you told me to do. You got some explaining to do. That's that's the human element. That's the Job element, right?
Yep.
And the thing about God is he'll let you, he'll let you talk that talk. He'll let you, all right, say what you got to say. Okay, you done? You done. You finished or you done? Okay, now it's my turn.
Right.
And so it's just kind of like, man, you just got to be humble enough to come to a point where it's like, all right, man, I thought I was hearing you, but now I realized that I was missing something.
Wow.
And that's what hindsight is, man. So I'm trying to be open to the idea And again, when you have a certain level of intelligence or pride, let's just call it pride,
Yep.
you gotta be like, no, dude, I did what you told me to do. You know what I mean? And that's the space that you sit in for a little while when you're mad at God. It's almost like, I did what you told me. Why didn't this work?
But yep.
Right. And you know
Yep.
what I mean? And then you got to sit back and be like, did I really tell you? Like, I told you to be a friend. I didn't tell you to be
That's
in a
right.
relationship.
That's
You know what I
right.
mean? Like you know better than that. Like, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like, you don't even need confirmation. Like, God word tell you, like, you should have been
Exactly,
there.
right?
You know what I mean? Like, certain things, guys were like, you shouldn't have been there. You interpreted the way you wanted to
It's
interpret it.
true. That's true. But
And
isn't that
so,
what we
you
do
know,
though?
it's that.
Isn't that what we
Yeah.
do though? I think as you're speaking about what you're talking about being thankful and how you go through your daily processes, that's all elements of greatness, right? Being able to humble yourself and come before God is probably one of the greatest things you can ever do, and give him thanks for the things that are still going well in your life, right? Sometimes God has to remove things from you in order for you to get to your next dimension of greatness internally and externally, right?
Right.
There's something in you that this person that you're with is blocking from you be able to become. And you can be good as a partner, but I want you to be great as XYZ in the world. And as long as you're attached to this particular spirit, this particular individual, this particular mindset, your gift will not ever be introduced to the individuals nor the environments that I called you to be in. So come on, Joseph, this hurt had to happen to you in order for me to get you closer to where you're ultimately supposed to be. And I think that's barking on greatness when you come to that realization. It's like, you know what? This happened. This is the reality. This is how I feel. What's my next now? Right. And God, I need you to help walk me through. And it's interesting, and since for the sake of time, there's I have 2 steps left. Do the things you enjoy and love. Now, I want to caveat this by saying that don't mean doing recreational activities, legal or illegal. Okay, some people would misinterpret and say, "Well, L said, do the things I love, and I love puffing." I'm like, that's not what I'm talking about. L said, "Do the things I love." I must go ahead and have casual intercourse or casual acquaintances. Right? That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about things that are constructive that you do. That's whether you're writing your book, being active, like all the things we talked about before, taking up photography, taking up another language, doing something that you've always had a desire to do, that time wasn't available because you're dedicating that time to another person, right? So talk to me right now. Even though we are experiencing a pandemic, I'm not gonna call it a pandemic, I'm gonna call it a goddemic, because he's the orchestrator of what takes place, right? Because he could call it to an end, or he could create it to be started. But even in our creative sense, what are some things that you're doing that you love and enjoy right now that some people probably haven't thought of?
Um, well, I will say this. I had to get to a place where my mind wasn't so jumbled up that I could do something else. So
Mm,
I didn't try to start something until, what I mean, for a while, I couldn't hold a thought other than heartbreak. Like, that's
okay.
the only thought, you know what I mean? And so I had to speak past that thought. And that's all I could focus on. Like, all I could do was like, I got to say God's word, even if I don't want to, even if I don't believe it, I got to speak God's word. So there was just a period of time where all I was doing was building up to be able to hold a thought other than heartbreak. So once I got to that point,
Mm-hmm.
I started saying, okay, what are some things that are going to help me in the next phase of life? So, I went and got a business certification, what I mean? Something that I knew career wise, business wise was going to help me in the next phase of it. And it helps if you've had a vision for your life. Like, I went back to the vision for my life. Like, I didn't have
Okay.
to think of anything new. It was like, what's on my vision board that I've ignored? And it was like, okay, I said I wanted to do some investments. Don't know what that is right now, but let me be
Right.
open to it. You know what I mean? Like that, and that was my thing. So, I jumped in a couple of investments because, something that was on my to-do list. And so I think there you have to be careful in this space of let me do something productive, because you still have to balance it with this, even though it's productive, is it good for me?
Mm,
And what I mean by that is, we talked about it. I was looking to sell my house.
right.
You know what I mean? It's something good, but I don't think it was good in that season. I think that it was more of a trying to keep myself busy and an emotional decision more than anything else looking back. You know what I mean? Because I justified it like, man, I can, what I put into it, I can get this type of return. But when certain things fell through, I was really pushing, they fell through. I sat back and I was like, is this now the time to be homeless? Is this now the time not to have a home? You know what I mean? Like
Right.
I have money in my pocket, but no place to live. Is this the time for that? You know what I mean? You know, do I really want to go from a house to an apartment? Like I really enjoy being in the house. I like the peace and the quiet, you know what I mean? But because part of what was driving me was I had memories with that person in this house.
Right.
And I wasn't processing that. When I walked in the house, what I saw was the person that was missing, not the blessing that I had in having the house.
Oh, that's a
And
word.
so I think God at that time, and I was pushing. I had the real estate agent on the phone. She had come to the house. I had a dude trying to fix up my yard. Like I was on it, but things just kept falling apart. And one of my prayers has always been, God, what's for me, let it be for me. Whatever door should be closed, close it. Whatever door should be open, open it. So I kind of feel like that was God, like, yeah, you think you're doing the best thing for you, but you keep pushing. I'm gonna put things in framework so you can't go but so far.
Wow.
And so that's kind of how I looked at it. Like you have to make sure that your productivity is not an emotional push and to get rid of something that belongs in your life and then to bring something into your life that doesn't belong.
It's funny, and I thank you so much for that. Even with relationships, that prayer you just say, Lord, let what it be for me and be for me, and what if isn't, you let it be moved. And we say that, but I don't know how
We don't want
committed.
it. We don't want it.
We
We
don't
want it
know.
for the good thing. We want
Right.
God to move the things that we see is
Right.
good in,
Right.
and the things that we see is bad, right? Like that's
Right.
that's the irony of it. Like,
That's right.
hey, I wanted that. That was good.
Right. No,
That was bad, and you told me to get the
that's what
bad
you
stuff
told
out.
me.
So that's why. But they always tell you, be careful what you pray for.
Be careful what you care for. Be careful what you pray for. And it's funny because we look at our relationships, we forget that, right? We hear, and it's funny when I hear individuals who are faith-based individuals. I'm not going to say necessarily just Christians, but individuals who have relationships with God to be like this. Oh yeah, Lord, use me, right? Lord, remove the things that are not like you. Help me to achieve the life that you have for me. Help me achieve my purpose and my goals. Give me patience. You ask all these things, God's like, what you don't know, in order for me to get you there, I have to remove this person out of your life, right? I have to close this door, right? I think of King Xerxes, for example. If you read the book of Esther, King Xerxes was married to Vashti, right? And that was the queen. That was the queen. However, some things took place, and King Xerxes, like, it's for his boys telling him, like, look, if this chick continue to disrespect you, our wives gonna think it's okay that they can disrespect us, right? So I don't know what you're gonna do, but I ain't having that in my house. So he dismissed her, right? But
Right,
he had to dismiss Vashti in order for Esther to be an option.
right,
See, a lot of times we hold on to things that God wants to bless us with. It's going to expand our kingdom, his kingdom, expand our lives, increase our lives, but we don't want to get rid of it because of our relationship and our connection to it, right? And it's not until then we're asking God for these things, but God's like, I can't move until you decide to move. Now, if I move on your behalf, you really ain't gonna like it. So I'm gonna give you the opportunity to do it yourself, or I'm gonna do it. But either way, it's not gonna stop me from you living your purpose. But anyway, you got ready to say something, D.
See, I think the element and the problem when you're a human being is time, right?
Okay. Yeah.
We can't see further than the moment that we're in.
Right.
So it's kind of like God sees things from front to back, from beginning to end. We only see things in the moment that we're in. So even if logically I can tell myself there's something better out there, the time that I'm in, I can't see it.
That's right.
And I think that, again, that's why trusting God is such a key to everything in life. But in the time that I'm in, I can't see it. Like, even if I can say it, I can't see it.
Right.
And that's the part about that makes being a creative being so wishy-washy.
Right.
Because the vision can be cast either way. Right? It can be like, there's nobody that's going to be better, and then there's somebody that can be better. The difference between the vision is what you are getting your vision from. If I'm getting it from me, then it says this was the best that I could have got. That's why I
Mm-hmm.
got to go back to God, because God's like, nope, I gave you some promises here. All
Mm-hmm.
right, if you can visualize them, if you can take this word and make it a picture, that's what he did to Abraham. He gave him a
Mm-hmm.
word, but he took him outside. He said, look at it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm giving you something that you can focus on.
Right.
And that's the thing about being in heartbreak, is where is your focus? And
Right.
it's hard to move that focus. Like
Right.
it's a work. I mean, every day it's a work. And I think that's the thing that people miss sometimes, is like, as hard as you work to keep that relationship, as hard as you got to work to keep yourself.
That's right. If not more.
And
Yeah.
more probably.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the thing. Like, man, I gotta keep working. I gotta keep working on this new vision. And even if God told me, I gotta work to believe it. You know what I mean? It's
Mm-hmm.
work at every level. I gotta work to find it. I
Mm-hmm.
gotta work to hear it. I gotta work to believe it. I gotta
Mm-hmm.
work to believe it as much as I believed in where I am now.
Mm-hmm.
And that element of time is what makes the difference. What are you doing with that time? And it's a struggle, man.
It is a
It's a
struggle.
struggle.
And I think in that struggle though is also where you find your strength too, right?
Yeah.
And what I was going through, I didn't become an author because I've always wanted to be an author. Does that make sense to you? I
Mm-hmm.
enjoyed Shakespeare. I enjoyed writing, but I knew nothing about writing a book. You're talking to a person in English 101 who got a C plus, right? And my English teacher said, Ellard, you could be a phenomenal writer if you just tune into that gift that you have. I'm looking at it like, well, I have a gift, but it wasn't until I was dealing with a major breakup and all the things were falling part of my life. God gave me a message to start writing a book. The first book I wrote was Moving Forward Courageously, 7 Secrets to Restore Love, Money, and Happiness in Your Life. You remember reading that one. And the next one was Defeating Goliath. God took my heartache, my heartbreak, all the issues tied to it, and allowed me to do something that I enjoy, which is writing, and help me create something that's going to empower, inspire millions of people, right? Which comes to my last step, give back. See, the gift that you have, Dwayne, the gift that I have, the gift that everybody has, when God introduces you to it, it's not for you.
Right.
With this conversation dialogue for us is helping us, but it's not necessary for us. And it is a way of giving back to those who are struggling right now. We've been through the process many times. Some people, this is their first time going through a breakup. Some other individuals have to be reminded, yeah, you know what? There's some red flags I probably should have paid attention to, and I didn't. But now here I am, I'm stuck. So
Right.
give me an idea or a couple ways you feel like you're gonna give back to society, to yourself, to whomever, that's going to help inspire, provoke, and teach someone else.
Um, I would sum it up into lessons learned.
Mm.
Um, Even where I am now, and because I've been there before, I can share my experiences and my thought processes, and I can help people understand where they're at so they can move forward. The thing about the hardest thing about leaving a relationship sometimes is that there's still hope, right?
Mm.
When something is dead, you can move on.
Right.
But as long as you have this element of hope, like there's a possibility, that's what keeps people coming back, right? And so I think the lessons learned for me is that's what I share with people. I share not only like my understanding of the human being, because a lot of times the issue when you're dealing with things is that you don't see that individual outside of yourself. You
Right.
don't see that situation outside of yourself. And so one of my gifts is that I can separate who I am in with the person and in the situation from me being an individual looking out and saying, this is what I see.
Right.
And so that's where my giving back is coming from. Like, we're having this conversation. Mine's is lessons learned. You know, I, you gave me advice months ago, and even though I heard it, I wasn't ready to completely implement it. Like my heart wasn't strong enough to completely implement it, but
Right.
I knew what you were telling me was right. So you
Right.
planted a seed, right? Your life lessons planted a seed in me, and once it was nourished enough and had enough rain, however you want to look at it,
Mhm.
rain is favor or rain is washing away everything and exposing what's left.
Right.
It was rained on enough that it could grow into something else.
Mm.
And so a lot of times when you give back, you also have to understand that I'm giving in a season that all I'm going to do is plant a seed. Like that's I grew up on a farm. My dad was a farmer.
Okay.
Sowing and reaping is one thing that I understand probably better than most because I've cultivated the process throughout my life.
All right.
And so I always look at it as like whatever gifts I have, whatever I have, I'm just sowing seeds. Whoever may be the recipient of the harvest, whether it be me or somebody else, that's not my concern. Scripture always talks about you sow seed benevolently and God takes care of the rest.
Right.
My job is to sow the seed. So that's what I look at as far as giving back. I'm going to sow a seed. You struggling? Where you at? If I'm further ahead than you, then I can show you what the next step looks like. Right? That's my gift to you. Maybe we at the same place. You know what? We can struggle together. We can comfort each other. We can build each other up. We can be accountable to each other to be productive today, to be active today, to do something today, to find a scripture today. You know what I mean? And that's kind of how I look at it. It's like, how can I give? Now that I've got this time and this space, there are people who are hurting, who like me going to a counselor. They may not go to a counselor, but they'll come to me. They trust me enough to say, hey, you know, what do you think? What do you see? What do you hear? And it's my responsibility to give them a word from God. Like, I don't want to give them my opinion. I don't want to give them what I think. I want to give them, this is God's perspective. And so that's what no matter what I do, whether it's in business, whatever the case may be, I always try to give them a God perspective. Right. And so I think that's the giving back. I mean, that we're supposed to bless to be a blessing. You know, that's our calling. And so that's what I look at. Like, how can I show you God? I think that's the way I look at it. Like, I never want people to see me. I always want people to see God. That's what I want people to see. Because I'm broken just like everybody else. But if I can be a vessel that helps you reconnect with a God who's always trying to reconcile with you anyway, then I've done something good. And so that's my giving back. No matter the shape, form, or fashion, it is, how do I help you reconcile to God? Maybe if all I can tell you is, I prayed for you today, I interceded for you today. You know, I'm here if I can be. If nothing else, just letting somebody know they're loved and not alone. You know what I mean? That's one of the biggest things in the world, is to know that you're not alone. That's what makes the relationship with God difficult sometimes, because it's a presence that's not based on the elements of your senses. You can't see it, smell it, touch it. It's ever present, but it seems so far away. Right. So if I can help you realize that you're not that far away from God, and He's closer than you think, then that's a gift to you. That's a gift to me. Right. You know what I mean? I can't tell you how many times that you called me, and it meant so much to me, man, because it was like somebody loves me, man. Like, you and other people just saying, hey, you okay today? Like, that meant the world to me. And until I could get to God myself, you guys were my conduit. So it matters, man. Like, what you do matters. You matter to somebody. That's why I say everybody has a purpose. If nothing else, you help me get to the next day when I didn't know if I could. So that's the gift, man. Just love on somebody today, because God is love. If you don't know anything else about God, God is love. If you can love on somebody today, you've done a God thing. I want you to think about that. You've done something that only God can do. You love somebody. So that's the way I look at it.
I'm gonna tell you this. You know, I love you, bro. You know, I think even like my little brother, but I think even my little brother sometimes. But I look up to you so much though, which is crazy, right? Your gifts and your talents, I've watched secondhand. This is not from something I observed, right? This is something I've watched, experienced. You know, I saw the transformation of Dwayne Deloatch and Deloatch Incorporated. You know, all the things you do and the fascinating things you do in people's lives. So I want to say thank you. But before we go, give us some inspiring and encouraging words to the people who are watching or listening to this message about dealing with a breakup today.
All right, man, let me get my eyes together.
It's
allergies
okay.
kicked in a little bit.
Yeah, I see it. Yeah, you know, those allergies in the winter time, boy, I tell you.
Yeah, I know, they're crazy, right? What was the question again? I got all off track. What's the question
what are some inspiring or encouraging words you can leave people with today?
Man, whatever you appreciates. And so this tricky thing about life is finding something to appreciate. You know what I mean? Like, no matter where you are and what you're going through, I think that the challenge is always seeing the beauty in life, right? Like, no matter the tragedy that's going on, the world is still a beautiful place. You are still something beautiful in that place that God has put you in. Right. And I think that's the tough part. And sometimes you just have to step back and say, what is the beauty in everything that's going on? And some days you don't find it in you just find it in life. Some days I could just be walking and I would see a little kid play, and I would just be like, man, they're so happy. They ain't got a care in the world. um, I mean, the simple things, the little things. That kid over there playing with a can, right? Happy
Right.
as can be.
Yep.
You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Like just enjoying life. And I think of how simple things can be and how complicated we can make it sometimes. And I think that's what you have to get to is finding the simple things in life that are beautiful, and sometimes you find it in other people. Sometimes you find it in nature. I got to walking and sometimes I would just see the sun setting and I'm like, man, that's beautiful. I mean, scripture talks about how God's invisible nature is seen everywhere.
Right.
And I
Yes.
think that is what you have to realize is that there's beauty all around you. Even in the tragedy of whatever it is that you're grieving, whatever it is you lost, a
Right.
relationship, a business, there's still beauty that can be found. You just gotta look. You gotta look harder because when things are going good, it's easy to see,
That's right.
right? I mean, I think David was like, he believed, and that's a key thing. He believed that he would see the goodness of God in the land of the living. You have to believe that, and that's what your focus has to transition to at some point in time. Is that life is beautiful. How do I experience it on that level? It didn't stop being beautiful because of what I'm going through. I just shifted my focus into this state that I'm in rather than everything else that it could be. And
Right.
that's the challenge. What I mean? That's what I would encourage you to do. What I mean? Find something beautiful in the world, whether it's a person, a thing, a book, a picture, a word. Find something beautiful and thank God for that beauty because God is in everything. So
Got you.
the thing is you just got to find that beautiful thing for you. And it's tough sometimes, you know what I mean? But the better you get, and that's why thankfulness and gratefulness plays such an important part because it sheds a light on that beautiful thing. Like, man,
Hmm.
I got a house I'm living in. Like, there are people right now that are worried about the house losing their house because of the world around them, the things that are going on. And I'm blessed and fortunate enough to be in a house, four walls, warm. You know what I mean? Like, and I just started focusing on that. I started focusing on the beautiful things. I would call my mom, and then I was like, she's struggling too. I can do something for her. My presence can uplift her, and together we uplift each other. Like I just tried to find places where I could either find the light or be the light. Those
Wow.
are the two things that I focus on. And a lot of days in the beginning, I couldn't be the light. Didn't even try to be the light, but I
Mm-hmm.
tried to find it. I tried to find the light, and I think that's what you have to get good at. Let me find the beauty. Let me find the light. Um, and a lot of times you need to reach out to other people and let them know, like, hey, can you be a light for me? Like that was my question. Can you be a light for me? If only to let me know that I'm not alone. Can you be a light for me?
Right.
So that's what I
Wow.
got.
Well,
Not sure if that helps.
Dwayne, I thank you so much, and I think every person who's watching, listening, who's decided to stay with us to take notes or to find a path forward. You guys, you have been with Ellard Thomas with Power and Success Ministries with my good friend, confidant Dwayne Deloatch, talking about moving on, how to deal with the breakup and find your own happiness. Right? It's important for you to get to your next level. Where you are right now is just a comma. It's not the periods in your life. So remember that. Stay strong, stay encouraged, and know that God got you, and so do we. Have a great day and continue on into the spirit of excellence. Thank you.